It's looking good for the Nintendo Switch thus far, nearly 2 months into its release. While The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the game of choice thus far, other games like Snipperclips, 1-2-Switch, and Super Bomberman R are also finding popular audiences. Much like the Wii, retailers are having a hard time keeping them in stock, and when they are, they're selling out just as fast. On today's episode, we give our first impressions, our opinions, thoughts, likes, dislikes, and hopes for the Nintendo Switch. All this next on Downloadable Content. Welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with me we have Ron.
Hey, everyone.
We have Nick.
Hello.
And almost 2 years to the day, first time since Season 5, we have Ben.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Welcome back. You've been missed. A lot's happened in 2 years.
I've heard Nick is suddenly. Last time I left, I was close to the leaderboards and appearances on the show, and obviously that's no longer the case.
Yeah, Nick has kind of stormed past you, and Ron, well, no one's going to catch him.
We're all fighting for third place at this point.
I mean, yeah, sorry. Just like, I like doing this thing. Suddenly, I'm behind.
90 episodes later.
Maybe this will be a part-time thing for you, Ron. Right? It's just you're not that invested or anything. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll see how things go. You never know what the future holds.
Yeah, 7 years later, it's a part-time gig. But yes, we're going to be talking about, once again, the Nintendo Switch. If you've been listening right along this season, we opened this season with the Nintendo Switch, talking about our hopes and dreams for this thing that finally was given a name. And now that it's been out for almost 2 months at this point, we've got some first impressions, but before we dive into that discussion, just want to remind everyone out there that every single episode of Downloadable Content can be found on our website at dlcpodcast.com. You can also find out our recording schedule there, so if you want to be in an episode, or if you want to give us ideas for future episodes, just let us know, and we will happily talk about them. All there, dlcpodcast.com, as well as iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and now Google Play Music. Alright, now that I've gotten the plugs out of the way. But yes, it has been almost 2 months since the Switch came out, gentlemen, and the four of us either own one or have had some significant playtime on them. So I think we are all pretty qualified to give some first impressions. What do we think of the system thus far? I mean, obviously it's still very, very early in the Switch's life cycle, but as early sales comes in, it looks like Nintendo is finding a pretty substantial audience.
So if I can jump in, nobody else wants to. I think my impressions could really be broken down into two sections. One is just on the basic conceit of the whole Switch idea, going from portable to home console. It works. I mean, it seemed silly. The first time I watched that trailer where they showed off exactly how the system worked, my thought was, oh, cool, they did a little movie magic to make it transfer a little faster, because it's not actually possible that it's that speed. And then I tried it myself, and I said, well, never mind, I'm stupid. It was actually that speed. I was just really thoroughly impressed at how quickly it all worked. And, there are some interesting compromises that had to come out of a system like this. The controls, the analog sticks, everything's a little bit smaller than you'd think it should be, especially coming from something like the Xbox One or PlayStation 4. But I found it was still surprisingly comfortable. For about a week or so, I'd remind myself, oh yeah, it really is this tiny. And then, it becomes normal, and you get used to it again. But one thing that I think that's underrated, that I think Nintendo actually, they get some crap for, but I think they actually deserve a lot of credit for, is how they really engineered the system to just be fast. You can pick up the system, and within 10 seconds of touching it, you can be back in whatever game, whatever cutscene, exactly what you were doing when you last put it down. And I think that's really something that they don't get enough credit for, because it does make a difference. To boot up my Xbox is a couple of minute investment, versus this is within 10 seconds I'm back in whatever game I wanted to play. So I know that part of that is because the Switch software is so heavily pared down. People complain about the lack of functionality in a lot of areas, but that's a trade-off I definitely think was the right move to make, because they can build back in later things like Netflix and a more robust online friend lobby. But we saw from the Wii U, that was a slow system, and it never recovered as far as just general use around the operating system. So I'm really happy that they focused this time first and foremost on, let's get this thing lightweight and really, really quick.
I was say you can get away with having it being lightning quick with the fact that its almost entire internal capacity for memory is literally like flash memory. So,
I mean, yes and no though, because the Wii U didn't work off of a hard disk either. That was also all flash memory, and that was not a quick system to start up and to launch a game on. Even if you weren't launching a game that was on a CD, even if it was launching a game that was on the internal memory. I think just the software had so many other bells and whistles, the Mi Plaza, all that other stuff. And I think that really, there were some cool ideas there, but I think it just slowed everything down. So I'm really happy that Nintendo instead focused on, let's just put in a few features and really nail them and get everything running fast.
It's interesting you say that, because Ben, I don't know if you listened to the season opener, but that was actually a criticism that was brought up by a couple members of the panel, that the Switch operating system did not have the features that we've become so used to with the PlayStation and the Xbox. Netflix, Hulu, online, a massive online presence. And, Nick and I sort of went the opposite tack. I mean, we're kind of in agreement that, I don't mind the fact that the Switch's operating system is games-oriented. It's not trying, at least at this point, to be the be-all, end-all entertainment system the way that the other two consoles are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I'm not saying I'm giving them a total pass on not having those features. By E3, I want some kind of plan in place and announced for when is Virtual Console coming, what's that going to look like? When is this online, friend lobby stuff coming, and what's that going to look like? But what I'm saying is, for trying a different concept, I'm really okay, and in fact happy that they chose to just focus on let's nail the core features. You look at some of the earlier, you look at some of the first smartphones and some of the ideas there. It's okay, we're missing a couple of features, but let's just get a really solid experience. This is a new thing for people. Let's just nail what we're trying to get done, because we can build back in later. It's less important to launch with a lot of features than it is to really hit our core experience. I mean, that's how I view it. But you're right. It would be nice if it did a few other things, but I don't need another Netflix box. I don't need another. I mean, the friend lobbying, I'm not expecting too much, because it's typical Nintendo. It's also not the first time they've tried stuff like that. The original Wii was supposed to have a DVD player, and then they pulled it out, because even in 2006, their logic was, well, everybody has laptops, everybody has desktops, every one of those has a DVD player. How many more DVD players do you really need? And this way we can help keep the cost of the system down by not having to license it. So, again, it's not bundling in tech that other people have. I think there's almost taking the approach of, if you really care about this, you already have a way to do it, whether it's a competitor system or some other product, And, if not, then we don't need to add it in there for you anyway.
Well, that's the whole thing with Nintendo and their with this friend system that they're having going is using your smartphones as with Nintendo applications on it. Nintendo is already kind of using the Switch not really so much as a main hub for us to do our everyday lives with, but really is more of a complement to whatever it is that we have with it. Be it PS4, Xbox, smartphone, laptop, whatever. I think that was the direction Nintendo was going with to begin with. I had my reserves at first, but not after spending almost 2 months with this new system. I honestly, I really approve of this change. It's games first. Nintendo's have always been games first approach, but this is, very focused on getting everything booted up, getting everything ready to go, as you said, Ben. And with the games being on cartridges once again, it has allowed for some really fast load times, even in game. So it's been really nice. My experience with the Switch thus far has been extremely solid. Something that was kind of surprising to me as I started to play around off the big screen and kind of have it in handheld mode is how loud this thing is. Anyone else had to turn down the volume because of just kind of jarred the ears a little bit?
How about the brightness? How about the brightness on the system?
Yeah, that too.
Well, brightness makes sense. Sorry, Ron, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I had the brightness turned down all the way. Now it's like, this is still too bright. What the hell, man?
I haven't had a problem with it being too bright, but that to me makes sense just because you think about how screens like this work, especially when you're outside. You need a really, really bright screen to be visible if you're in especially direct sunlight. So I think that was a concession to the idea of we expect this to be used outside of normal environments where we expect people to use a game system. And don't forget, they have a lot of experience designing systems that people take with them. So I'm sure whatever lessons they had from the Game Boy and DS and 3DS line, they were happy to spend on this in terms of how bright does the screen need to get. You look at something like the original DS versus the DS Lite, which came out, a year and a half later, and that was a world of difference as far as the screen quality and the brightness. So I think it does make a lot of sense for them to have a super bright screen. Nick, when you said the loudness, you mean the volume, like speakers, or were you talking like the fan?
No, the volume from the speakers. It was playing Breath of the Wild in handheld mode while I was doing something else. I had to turn the volume down a few notches just because of how, everything is a very robust sound. I understand that it's, kind of had to help you hear the game a little better in maybe higher busy traffic or, more where there's more people around, but still having that kind of crisp volume, especially for someone who doesn't not have the greatest hearing in the world, was a very pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah, I'm sure, like you said, it's something more to do with this is going to be used outside. This is going to be used, if you look at the marketing, I think they really nailed exactly how they see people using it in some of the marketing. You see the 4 people gathered around a small table playing Mario Kart. They're playing the basketball game they showed off in the original trailer, or any of those games. They know you're going to be competing with potentially street noise and other people talking in the background, and so you need something that you can really hear all of that action and hear what's going on. So it doesn't surprise me. It's very nice of them to include such robust speakers, but it's not anything shocking, I don't think.
I just think that from Nintendo's standpoint, this is something that maybe we're not all used to. I don't know how many of us own tablets like Microsoft Surface or an iPad, so what sort of comparison there. But so far in my own limited experience, I haven't played as much of it as I probably should. I've been playing a bunch of other games for research. The controllers themselves, the Joy-Con controllers. Now, I've been doing a nice mix of handheld and TV. And I find that the Joy-Con controller actually feels pretty comfortable. It does not feel cramped. It does not feel, too big. I mean, that was a criticism that I had, like, with the initial Xbox control. I'm like, okay, this is a side of beef that I'm holding in my hand.
The Duke, I believe, was the popular nickname for that controller.
With good reason. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the controller? And obviously that's super important if you're going to be playing for prolonged sessions, as we are all want to do, especially with games like Breath of the Wild. So what do you think of the Joy-Con thus far?
I think it's been pretty responsive thus far. I know that a lot of people were having some issues with the left Joy-Con not being able to respond to the Nintendo Switch. I guess I'll count myself among the lucky ones who did not experience that problem. Everything I've had with it is been very responsive, very crisp in the hand, and with the included grip, I did not get a Switch Pro controller because, my God, those are impossible to find without spending $110 because fuck you, eBay. But the Joy-Con itself has been extremely, extremely comfortable. Now, I realize I don't have the biggest hands in the world. They're quite minute, as it were. And so it maybe fits me a little better than it fits, say, my roommate, who does complain that he's been getting some hand cramps after playing on the Switch for a prolonged period of time. But I personally have not really had much problems with it. Everything works great, and the battery life is surprisingly good for the Joy-Cons.
I have honestly forgotten at times that the Joy-Cons have batteries in them because I feel like I never... Now, granted, most nights I put the Joy-Cons back on the system and throw it in the dock, and then I just pick it up when I want to play, and I play in handheld mode a lot. But the battery life I found is outstanding. I actually find that the 3DS buttons are a little cramped for me, and on this, the Joy-Con is absolutely great. There's no problem whatsoever with the button layout or the size. Again, it took like a week or so for me to get used to how small it actually is, and then it just became surprisingly functional. One issue I do have is that the A and B buttons feel like they should be in the opposite spots, so that I'm used to the like, if you're looking at the grid, whatever is the bottom button is usually the like OK or Go button, and here it's B, which has always been traditionally used as the back button. So when I switch from the Switch to, say, Xbox or one of the other controllers, I pick it up, I have to remind myself that the button layout is a little different than what I expect it to be.
Button layout really hasn't changed since the SNES or the Wii U for that matter, but go ahead.
Not layout, but what the buttons do. I mean, if you're spending more time outside of the Nintendo ecosystem, then the layouts are different. It's a little... Brian, you remember when we used to get Metal Gear Solid, like 2 or 3, and everybody else would use X as the confirm button, and Kojima always insisted on using circle as the confirm button, so you'd try and go into a menu and you'd end up going back. You know what I'm talking about?
I do know. That was probably the number one cause of death in the early goings.
Yeah, well, like, even just the menus.
Yeah.
Well, that's a Japan thing, too, is they love using circle over X over for confirming stuff.
Right, but it was just... And it makes sense from a sense. It's, this is like, the circle was a positive symbol and the X was a negative symbol, so it made sense that would be go back. It was just that almost every other game, when it was localized, they'd switch those buttons, and for whatever reason on the Metal Gear series, they insisted on not switching those buttons. So you'd always pick up one of those games for the first time and be thrown off by just on the main menu. Now, as far as the connectivity, I unfortunately am also one of the affected users. My left Joy-Con definitely has dropped connection at times when I'm playing in TV mode, which is super frustrating. I don't quite understand this. I was in one apartment, and every once in a while I'd have a little bit of an issue, but it wasn't really a big deal. We moved to our new place, I'm actually closer to the TV than I was before, and thus closer to the Switch. And somehow, despite the fact that there's still nothing in between me and the system, it's gotten a lot worse since we moved. I don't understand how that works, but either way, I'm going to have to send in the unit to Nintendo at some point. The problem is I'm still playing through Breath of the Wild, so I have no interest in getting rid of the system for a week at a time.
Yeah, I have to wonder if that's just like a network interference thing.
No, they said that's an actual hardware issue and not a network interference thing. It's like, yeah, we've heard reports of some left Joy-Cons not working properly, and so we got people to send in theirs, and then we took it apart and went, oh look, it's a manufacturing error. Our bad. Send it back into us. We'll replace it for you.
Oh, all right. I did not know that.
Yeah, supposedly, I think Game Explain did it, and a couple of other outfits did it. They sent in a system. They sent in a Joy-Con, opened one up, took pictures of it, sent it in, and then opened it up again to see what the difference was when they got it back. And there was, I think it was just a piece of felt, but realistically, if that's separating two antenna connectors or something, then that could explain, some interference there. That could explain why it was not as responsive, not as strong a signal as it should be. So it seemed like there was a small actual change made. So the manufacturing issue that they talked about could have just literally been, hey, one of our manufacturing partners forgot to put in this one piece during assembly. Either way, it is annoying as all hell. I do not want to spend $70 on a Pro Controller for a week, or at all for that matter. So I will at some point have to make that Sophie's choice and send in the system to just get the thing fixed. Give up Zelda for a week.
It'll be hard, man, I know.
I mean, I'm only 70 hours into the game, but, I still have a lot left to do, so.
Just don't suffer any withdrawal symptoms, it'll be okay.
So hard. I'm shaking. Ugh, terrible.
Ben's getting DT just from, Zelda withdrawal. Well,
I've had to explain repeatedly to my girlfriend how important this game was before it came out, because she's not a gamer. I was like, you don't understand how long we've waited for this title, how excited I am for this. There are not the words to easily convey this. Please trust me on this. But now that she's seen it, she's like, wow, this is gorgeous. I totally understand why you waited for this. And, completely understands when I take every opportunity to play 5 minutes of it.
So, moving on, I know, Ben, you had brought your Switch to PAX, much against everyone's better judgment, but, you and Sarah were showing off snipper clips, which I thought was using some pretty cool mechanics, just on, because obviously there were no TVs present, so you were playing this, in handheld mode. But,
yeah, tablet mode, yeah.
But you and Sarah seem to be having a pretty good time, and just judging from how the controller standpoint, it looked pretty seamless and pretty flawless.
Yeah, it's a very smooth game. It's a lot of fun. I think it's been getting a lot of praise. It's honestly, people kept saying they should have included 1-2 Switch as a launch title, as a pack-in. But really, I think if there's anything that would have been a good get people involved party type title the way Wii Sports was, I would have actually argued that it would be Snipper Clips. Now, I haven't actually played 1-2 Switch, but every time I've shown somebody new Snipper Clips, the reaction has always been, this looks so fantastic. We had some friends over the other night, and I wanted to show them the game, which led to the two of them, with a couple, playing for about an hour, just engaged in the game by themselves. At the end of which, the guy in the couple turned to me and was like, well, fuck, I need to go buy one of these now. Thanks a lot, jerk. So it's definitely a very fun title. It's a simple title, which I think is a big part of the appeal. And we're having a lot of fun with it. We haven't had a ton of time to play it, but it's absolutely something I would recommend. Gamers and non-gamers alike. It's just a simple, fun party mechanic with a good, great visual design. It's very kiddie, very cutesy, but it's still very appealing.
And as you said, it looks like, a good way to get people into the Switch, because the Wii Sports title was an excellent way to learn how to use the motion control. So,
yeah, I mean, it makes very simple use of the buttons. It's very, very forgiving. It's meant to be a very fun game, which I really liked. The next title I kind of want to get into possibly is Snake Pass. I've heard a little more mixed things about that, but a platformer where you play as a snake sounded really interesting. That just looked kind of a cool, cool experience. I'm not entirely sure how it controls, but I'm excited to try and find out. Yeah, I mean, obviously most of my time has been spent on Zelda, and I think they knew that was really what's going to happen, but it was nice of Nintendo to make sure that there were a couple of alternate experiences available for people right at launch.
Oh yeah, I mean, Zelda is one of the Breath of the Wild is one of those games that I could get lost in for hours, and the battery on the Switch unit will run out before the Joy-Con, and it's just like, oh, all right, fine, I have a TV.
Yeah, that's actually something really funny about it. I've been having so much fun just getting lost. Like, normally, well, we'll talk about this later, but that's definitely something I want to echo. I've just been having a great time. Like, hey, I've got 5 minutes. What's that over there? Let's go explore it. What do you mean it's a half hour later? Where did the time go? I'm late for work.
To go back to the Joy-Con controllers for a second, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick and tired of motion controls. Can we just stop doing this freaking gimmick now, please? I understand that, like, hey, there's something like you want to have motion control for, and it makes sense. And just like, okay, sure, but there was a game for that. There was a system for that. It's called the Wii. I'm sick and tired of this bullshit. I don't want it in my freaking games anymore if you can avoid it. Please, stop using motion controls.
Well, what Nintendo did do right is that they did give all their developers the option to not use motion controls, which is nice. To have the ability
the option means like 95% of them won't, because I don't think motion controls are ever gonna catch on.
No, probably not. Most developers and most games that are going to come out probably are not going to have them, and I'm okay with that. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. But the fact that the option even exists is nice to have, because Nintendo is basically said, we want to take all of our ideas and concepts and throw it into this one machine, and they certainly did it.
So I kind of have a little bit of a different take. I agree with you, Nick, 100% that it was a good idea for Nintendo to just say, like, here's all this tech. If you want to use it, great. If you don't want to use it, don't. Because that's not always the approach they've taken or that other companies have taken. But honestly, like, I find things like gyroscope aiming really, really helpful. I mean, when I'm trying to line up a shot in Breath of the Wild or place a pin, I'll use the analogs to kind of get in the rough area, and then I find that actually tilting the controller is better for the more precise aim.
That works for Breath of the Wild specifically because of the aiming system they use, where it's that little zoomed-in first-person view, like you're aiming down the scope of a gun almost.
Right,
it works just fine because that, like, you need that really precise aim, which you want on like a first-person shooter or something like that, and that's why it works so well. If you try and use gyroscopic aiming for a third-person point of view, you're going to be freaking twitching all over the frickin' place and not never hitting your target ever.
Oh no, I agree. I don't think that's the intended use, though. I don't think that's a thing that people will necessarily get involved in. I think motion has a place in certain cases. I think that it's not a thing that people should rely on overly. I'm happy that they did include also an IR sensor. I don't think it's been used that much. But I'm kind of okay with Nintendo throwing in all this extra tech into the Joy-Con and just saying, like, look, these are avenues that are available to you. If you want to use them, great. If not, don't worry about it. It's not something like the Wii U's gamepad where you have to use the some functionality on this until they abandon that because they saw nobody was doing it. Or like the Microsoft Kinect, which, Microsoft tried really, really hard to make people use it to the point of requiring the system have it for a little while until they finally saw that, this is some cool tech and nobody's using it. We don't need to keep investing in this. We can dump it because nobody's going to keep, taking advantage of it. So I agree. I don't think that everything is going to be super heavily motion controlled. But I'm kind of appreciative that gyroscopic aiming and gyroscopic movement is there for certain things.
Yeah, I think the gyroscopic controls, at least in some areas, is nice, but it's not, not every game is going to utilize it. Games like Breath of the Wild, games like Splatoon, where the fine-tuning is probably the best for that application, but otherwise, yeah, I don't really see many games going too out of control with the gyroscope.
And I think Nintendo's really acknowledging that. I mean, I think the fact that they included the Joy-Con grip, not the charging grip, but the regular grip that you can just slot your controllers into, and it's a close approximation of something like the Pro Controller, I think is a really strong sign that they showed that they expected people to use that system. You know, here is a traditional controller. You know, I think that was a really strong statement. One, in light of the fact that their last two systems have not shipped with any kind of traditional controller. And two, just in the sense of, look, we're giving you all of these options. Like I was saying before, they're giving you all of the possibilities and just saying to the developers and to the players, like, use this how you think is going to be best. So I think that they agree that there are still some functionalities and some applications for it, but I'm really excited about the fact that they didn't, you know, build it in such a way that it's required. And don't forget, certain games may have had really good motion controls that they might want to port, whether it's Nintendo or a third party. So if you pull that out, then suddenly you have to change how the game controls, you have to adjust button mapping. That all takes away from your development time. So I think it was a good idea for them to include it just for the sake of some backwards compatibility. I think it was a really nice thing to make it super optional in the way they did, so that it's available, but it's certainly not required. I'm not really opposed to them throwing it in there, because I don't see it as tech that really would have driven up the cost of the Joy-Cons or anything. And especially the gyroscopic stuff, I think is super useful.
All this beginning with a rant from Cranky Kong about motion controls. So thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
Much in the same way that I feel about 3D TVs, but that's a whole different rant.
That's fine. I do want to mention too that I don't know if you guys have experienced it at all, but I believe Nick mentioned the loudness of the fan, the exhaust fan.
No, I was kind of talking about the loudness of the speakers, but okay. Anyway, the fan.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have noticed this at all, but that fan can get a little loud to the point where like you can hear it when it goes to vent, and I was kind of worried about that too when I saw this thing and how thin it was, and was like, oh look, this thing's pretty small, but it's a game system too, and it's doing so much stuff. Is this thing gonna overheat? And it kind of does. It really does kind of overheat a bit.
I gotta disagree. I mean, systems getting warm is one thing, and certainly it does get a little warm to the touch, but I don't think it's ever uncomfortable.
The fact that it gets warm is concerning to me. It's like, this thing, for its size, should not get warm.
No, I really don't agree with that. I mean, look at your Xbox, look at your PlayStation. I mean, a big part of why they're so big is they are venting a lot of heat. Now, granted, you're not picking those up and playing with them, but you know, we're used to tablets that don't run on fans, and other similar systems that don't require nearly this kind of processing power. So of course they get to run cool. They still have internal cooling methods. They don't require anything mechanical. With this guy, it's still a dedicated mobile platform, but you know, it's no different than your notebook computer, your laptop getting a little warm when you're using it. Now, obviously, we can see that Breath of the Wild really is doing a number to push the system. It's cutting the battery life from about 6 hours to maximum 6 to 2.5, 3 hours for playing the game.
2.5.
Yeah, so it's not really, I mean, that's sort of just physics. It's the system is going to get warm, and the fan is there to keep it cool. Now, it's never gotten to a point where it's been anywhere concerning to me, and if it's something you're worried about, certainly I'd reach out to Nintendo, but, it's also not really custom hardware. Like, the main chip that powers this has been in a couple of other systems for a little bit of time now, so Nintendo and NVIDIA, who make it, probably have a really good handle on what the thing is capable of. So yeah, I know it's odd, like, it's odd to have a portable game system run on a fan, and I'll certainly concede that point. But it's also not, I mean, to my experience, it hasn't been troubling at all as far as how warm it gets. It's sort of, I'll touch the back a little bit and I'll say, oh, that's a little warm, and then that's the end of it. I mean, I felt my phone and I felt my tablet get hot, I mean, like uncomfortably warm, and this is nowhere near what I'm seeing with those.
Yeah, again, maybe this might be a little different with what you're playing. It might be like, possibly a fault, but I mean, the Switch gets warm. It's certainly, no doubt, it does get, it does rise in temperature, and as it should, because it is doing work. But I never had it to a point where I thought it was unbearable or made too much noise that I thought something was wrong with it. It's certainly, when you're playing games like Breath of the Wild, it does work a little harder than maybe some other games like Super Bomberman R, but I never really found it to be a huge issue that I thought it would be a detriment or maybe or perhaps a fault with the system itself. So I can't speak for every single case, but that's just mine personally.
Yeah. But the reason why I'm bringing up the heating thing is because of what I just linked, which, because for listeners who are on a Skype call, and what I linked to everyone is an article that came out a couple of weeks ago about Nintendo Switches starting to warp, like visibly warp the screen, visibly warp the system, and most of this warping is being caused by when the thing is in dock mode. That's another thing I want to bring up too, is that I've had friends that have had their screen scratched because of when they go put it in the dock. Even if they go to put it in gingerly, that it's just how they hold it and how they want you to dock it, which is kind of like gripped in the middle, gripping it with one hand and squeezing it, and then setting it into the dock, is causing them to scratch it, either indirectly or from brushing against the side of the dock system. And I've had people even jokingly say, I put a sock around the front of my dock so that I don't scratch the thing.
So two things that I want to get to. Just first, just reading the article, because I'd seen something similar before. It doesn't actually say for sure that overheating is the problem. Like, the top bullet point is literally overheating could be to blame. There's nothing definitive in here. It would make sense, but there's also nothing stating that it wasn't a manufacturing problem to begin with. There's nothing in here. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but I'm saying it could have also just been that. You're right. I've seen some of these other reports, but that is, trust me, the heat that the system that I've seen, at least on mine, is nowhere near what it would take to warp this. This is not a thin piece of plastic, and there is a lot. The heat sink is also something. Theirs is not something that's going to warp easily. So if there is an overheating problem, it seems to be rather contained. As far as the Switch, the dock scratching, I've heard about that also. Maybe I'm getting lucky on this one. I haven't seen that. I'm not really roughly throwing mine back in. It could have also been similar to the issue with the felt problem, that there was just somebody was supposed to put in some spacers and didn't. It sounds like a lot of these things are all quality control issues, but nothing like, it's not like the Red Ring of Death issue on the Xbox where the system itself was fundamentally broken. It sounds like these are some issues coming through that, as every system will have, as every piece of hardware will have, that there might have been just some issues with quality control where tolerances were not adhered to correctly, so things did scratch up. I just didn't want to, I don't want people thinking, man, all of these systems are clearly a piece of shit. Why would I go buy one of these if everybody's having some problem or another?
I bring this up because this is the thing that Nintendo has always been notorious for. They love their quality control. They adore quality control. They want their systems to be as perfect as possible, so there's as few flaws as possible. If they're having this many minor issues, even if it's only affecting 1 or 2% of the actual Switch audience, we've named 3 or 4 things that have affected the Switch negatively in one fashion or another. And I would consider a 8 to 10% quality control issue to be a big problem with Nintendo. I am certain that they're working and have worked on getting these things resolved, and that future Switches will not have these problems, but it's still a little uneasy to hear so many people having issues, and that was one of the concerns I had when the thing went mobile.
I mean, that's all valid, but it's sort of, I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding the argument, but first off, I feel like we're basing that a lot on anecdotal evidence, because, we've mentioned 3 or 4 issues, but it's not like any of us has had all 4 of them. And at most, like, I had the controller issue, Nick said he didn't have the controller issue, you feel your system's getting hot, nobody else said that they feel their system's getting hot. It's not like we're all having all of these issues, or any of us even is having all of these issues. I don't think we're a representative sample to just pick 4 random Switch owners.
I know, and anecdotal does not lead to empirical evidence. I'm just
right. And it's also, any ramp up before launch is always going to be if you're going to have manufacturing issues, that's where it's going to be. And actually, I think you're making the opposite point with your argument, because these are minor issues. Now, the unit bending obviously is certainly something a little more significant. I'm not saying that, but the Joy-Con, having some connectivity issues, again, that is very easily fixable. It is annoying, and it is something that should not have happened, but that is easily fixable. And again, the easy comparison is the Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death. That was not easily fixable, and that was a core functionality issue. That was a major manufacturing problem. A bigger issue was the fact that it was in the design. Look at the Galaxy Note 8, or Note 7, I'm sorry. The phones that were exploding.
The exploding
right.
Cell phone, yeah.
That was a fundamental, basic design flaw, an engineering flaw in how they compiled the system. Like, that was a major battery problem. Not something easily fixable, and not even, in fact, something they even knew what was causing the issue in the first place. At least with these issues, Nintendo can look at them, realize what's happening, and quality control issues are one thing. Fundamental engineering issues are completely different. So I would argue that if these are the only issues that are shaking out from however many millions of units they're selling, that's actually really good, because you're not going to get 0 issues on a system. You're just not. Even if, hypothetical, and I'm not saying this is what I think happened, but hypothetical. One of the people that posted on Reddit that their Switch head was warped had actually physically bent the unit themselves, right? Hypothetically possible, yes?
Yeah.
The fact that they would come in and take a look at that, if that was the worst that somebody could do to the thing, that would be really awesome. That would, in fact, be really impressive of them if that was the worst thing somebody could do. Couldn't even break it, you could only bend it. And they would certainly take a look at it and see, is this our issue or did something else happen? Again, versus a cell phone that explodes, versus an Xbox system that will completely just shut down whenever it's used over a certain way. So, it's not good, certainly. I'm not going to say that it's good that they were having problems, but there are certainly far worse issues that they could be having.
And really, this is kind of the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of argument is, you're really not going to hear the people who are going, hey, I really don't have a problem with these Switches. You're only going to hear the people who have the problem, who have these problems. And it seems to, even if it's, even if it's, say, like 2,000, if they're, selling, as I'm reading here, like, somewhere north of 1.5 million, 2,000 is phenomenal for defects. Even if the number was, 10 times that at 20,000, that's still a absurdly low amount of defects found with these Switches. And as you said, Ben, a lot of the problems are minor. Only a few Switches have truly been completely borked, as in screens don't work and it doesn't display on the television. But they have been few and far in between. And most of the problems are either, either minor or, just minor, if not insignificant. And they're, yeah, it's early in production. Yeah, this is, where you get some of the kinks out. Yeah, this is some of the risk you take for being an early adopter. But for the most part, even, it seems to me like it's just not a huge issue because, where there's just I just think that there's just so few people yelling and ranting about these defects that I just don't think I think it's kind of a making a mountain out of a molehill kind of scenario. Now, granted, people bringing these issues up front kind of makes you go, oh, let me check my Switch, make sure that there are no problems with it. But, and if you don't have the problems, good for you. But if you do, hey, there's the guides, and there's Nintendo saying, hey, we acknowledge it, we know, we're looking into it. So the fact that Nintendo has even done that has been, really good.
And to build on that, I mean, there are a few companies that are just tech lightning rods, right? I mean, Nintendo, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, Sony, like the big guys that manufacture lots of hardware. Everybody knows their names. If any of their big products, especially in a case like Nintendo, where they don't put out a new piece of hardware every year, they put out a new piece of hardware maybe every 2 or 3 years. A genuinely new piece of hardware. I gotta think that they would get a lot of attention if there was a real fundamental issue. If something was truly broken, especially with how, prevalent social media is, people taking pictures of their systems and uploading them all these ways. If there was a real game changer, full on, this system is completely broken bug, I would think we would have seen it. Now, maybe something manifests in a year. That's entirely possible. But, I guess I'm just saying, they did have a lot of experience with manufacturing handhelds, and all they did is stuff a more powerful computer in their next handheld. I don't really think that there are going to be tremendous numbers of quality control issues. But obviously, as I don't work for Nintendo, I can't tell you what they actually are seeing from it. It's just from the response we've seen from the general public internet, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of people complaining about their systems.
And, be that as it may, the problems that have been coming about, as few as they are, it seems as if Nintendo is addressing them pretty quickly. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're just sitting there going, "Oh, that's just the risk of being an early adopter, or that's this is new technology." It sounds like they're taking a proactive approach. I could be wrong on that, but
it seems to me like they are. I don't think you're wrong.
But all right, do we have any more we want to add regarding the system itself before we break the first half and go into the second half talking about the games themselves?
I have a question for the panel.
Okay.
And I'll give an answer after I throw this out. Has anyone broken the kickstand on their system?
No, but I'm also pretty careful with mine.
No, and I can see how someone could break it, because that thing did seem particularly flimsy when I used it, and I was like, I don't know if I want to use this anymore, upon seeing how thin and narrow this kickstand is, and how weighty the Switch can be in relation to it.
I disagree with that, because it is made of a kind of a thicker plastic, and it has a bit of a wider base. I mean, so long as you're not being like an 8-year-old and you're just swinging the thing open, if you're being a little ginger about it, I think the stand works great.
I've never used the kickstand on it yet, so
I just thought it was really interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
So that's a no answer from me, because I haven't had an occasion to use it yet.
I just thought it was really interesting that every review seemed to mention that the kickstand seemed really flimsy, and I'll agree it does seem thin and flimsy, but I wonder, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that it's actually supposed to be detachable. Like, part of the reason they built it that way is they know, like, kids might play with it, and thus they would potentially flip it out and break it. I guess it's sort of along the lines of why the cartridges allegedly taste so bad, which I did not try, but I read all the press about and was very amused at reading. You guys heard about this, right?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay. I really would hope within this panel that we are all smart enough adults not to put the damn cartridge in our mouth.
See, I was smart enough to have someone else do it for me.
See, that's now Ron is truly the genius here because he got his answer and did not have to subject himself to it. I did enjoy watching the clips and gifs of all the different games journalists being like, it can't really taste this bad. Oh god, it tastes this bad. Oh boy, why would I do that? What's wrong?
It's like, why would I want to put something sour and bitter in my mouth? No, thank you. I don't want to ruin my palate for the next 4 hours.
Thank you, Ron, for using the scientific method and having somebody else taste the cartridge to prove the theory that, yes, it does taste bad. Now, has anyone tried...
Testing methodology. This tastes awful. Here, try it.
Now, has anyone tried blowing on their cartridge yet? On their Nintendo Switch cartridge?
Well, another good way to ruin your system, actually, but we'll get into that.
Well, Nintendo thought the same thing in the NES. We all did it anyway. But...
Very true.
All right. So, on that hilarious, sour-tasting note, we are going to take a break. You'll have some music, and when we get back, we'll dive into the games themselves. Yes, we have a small library, and I suspect that most of the next half will be taken up by some Zelda game, I think. But, some nondescript Zelda game. So, that'll be on our second half. You are listening to Downloadable Content. We'll be back. Welcome back to Downloadable Content. We're all still here. We have not been sucked back into the world of the Elder Scrolls Hyrule. Because, let's face it, that's what it is. But yes, on this second half, we are going to talk about the games of the Switch, or what's been out so far. I mean, the library is obviously pretty limited, with more coming as the year progresses. But right now we've got enough to go on, and I think I would like to just get the elephant in the room, right out of the way first, and we'll talk a bit about Breath of the Wild, because let's face it, how many just in this group here are the four of us? How many people only have Breath of the Wild? I mean, I know that's the only game I own.
That's the only one I've played. I think my brother's got my brother, who's the one that has the Switch, I think has the Snipper Doodle, whatever that couple's game was that was mentioned in the first half.
Yep.
Yeah. I think he might have downloaded Bomberman, but that would be it.
I have Breath of the Wild and Super Bomberman R.
I have Breath of the Wild and Snipper Clips.
So, all right, so 2 games. Well, 3.
3.
And... Well, I mean...
Yeah, but, I mean, let's not forget, though, that there are other titles that, like, Mario Kart is coming out in a couple of days, which is a definite possibility for a purchase. You know, Mario Odyssey is going to be out sometime this fall, which I am super excited about. Sonic Mania is going to be out this summer, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
They're, you know, like, it's not fair... I mean, it's fair to say that there haven't been a ton of games yet that have been huge sellers, but I think it's fair to say that... I don't think it's fair to say that there's nothing good coming. I think that they just, you know, rather than launch with a lot of little titles, they launch with a lot of little titles and one major title that a lot of people were waiting a long time for.
Yes.
So I think... I don't think it's unreasonable of them to have said, like, well, we expect this to last people 2 months, because really it sort of has lasted people 2 months.
You figure people are average, like, what, me, you know, on a busy week, on a good week, like 10 hours a week, and it's going to take them 2.5 months before they finish, and by that time, Splatoon 2 is going to be out, and I'm really looking forward for that. So the fact that Nintendo's really doing like a major title every couple of months, the spacing is perfect.
Yeah, it's not even every couple of months. It's really almost one a month. I mean, if you look at... So Breath of the Wild was May. You're going to have... or March, I'm sorry. You're going to have Mario Kart at the end of April, right? Splatoon is...
July.
I think July. ARMS is going to be out in June. I think there was something for May, but I can't recall exactly what it was. Suddenly we're in the middle of summer. You know, they will have some other third-party help coming with there. Again, like I said, Sonic Mania. You know, and then you're gonna have Mario Odyssey this fall. I would be shocked if E3 doesn't come out with something else of, oh, by the way, this is also coming out for Switch this fall. You know, I think that their plan was really to sort of keep, you know, rather than just drop a bunch of games on us at once, to just let us know, like, look, we're pacing these out with about how long we think it's going to take you to finish them. There will be something new ready for you to play by the time you're done with it. Not to mention, there is DLC coming for Breath of the Wild. We're going to have that sometime this summer, the first batch. And then the second batch will be sometime this winter.
Right. And of course, don't forget, the 8th incarnation of Street Fighter 2.
Well, never forget Street Fighter 2.
8th? Really? I lost track at about Super Ultra Hyper Deluxe, the True Ultimate Edition.
No, Brian, what do you mean Capcom is re-releasing a game? That doesn't sound like them at all.
You know, I just...
What's that, Brian? They lost all their money trying to make Resident Evil? You don't say?
You know, when that will never not get a laugh to me when I saw the announcement saying, you can now pre-order your copy of Resident Evil 4 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And I went, oh, really? Good. I'm going to get very excited for the 8th re-release of an 11-year-old game. Good.
Listen, you know what? Real quick anecdote. I have a friend who'd never played the title, and it was available for like $7 on Steam through one of the HD versions, and he has a regular controller. And I was like, you absolutely need to buy this game. Like, I will pay for it, because it's still a really fun game. Especially if you've never played it before. Does not mean it's worth $20 every time you switch consoles, but it's still actually an excellent, excellent title.
Yes. So, on to Zelda, and just putting the caveat out there, we're going to try to avoid spoilers, but there's no guarantee of that. So, just putting out the general spoiler alert possibility there. So, you might want to skip this section if you...
Can I put in an addendum? Spoiler alert?
Sure.
Nick, you ruined this for me, I'll kill you.
I actually have learned, because I was so far ahead of my roommate, to be really ginger about how I said things. So I've learned how to really take a non-spoilery approach to Breath of the Wild. So you're safe, Ben.
I think I have two one quick set of guidelines that I think might be really helpful for us, and then actually I wanted to have a discussion with you about specifically how hard it is to avoid spoiling stuff in this game. But I think it's fair, like anything up until when you leave the Great Plateau, I think is totally fair game at this point. Brian, I know you've sunk in about 10 hours into this game, and so I know for a fact you have left the plateau because you left the Great Plateau before I did. Ron, is that a fair... I don't know how far you've gotten into this title. Is that
I beat Zelda. Zelda.
Okay.
I will be the one having to watch the spoilers because, oh my god, there's so many things I could say about it, but I will...
yeah.
I will play the snug bastard who stays quiet and wants to see you guys suffer.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair for us to talk... I think the easiest way to avoid spoilers is really to talk more about not so much story stuff, but like how the game progresses, how the game handles... I have this whole thing that I wanted to get into about like how the game handles your progression and how it's so different from all the other Zelda titles that I think is really kind of awesome and brilliant.
All right. That works.
So basically just, you look at the previous 3D titles, Ocarina and Majora's Mask and Wind Waker, and they're these great stories, but part of the reason they're such great stories is because they shepherd you through on a very specific set path. You have to beat the dungeons in a certain order. You have to get X item before you can get Y item. And then, you looked at what the original game was, and obviously it was like, hey, go do whatever the hell you want. There's very, very little gating that's involved there. And then what they did with Link Between Worlds, I thought was really interesting, but it limited them, because by telling the player you need this item to beat this dungeon, you can let them beat the dungeons in whatever order they want. But one of the really nice things about having them shepherd you through worlds was they could then build puzzles into each dungeon that relied on whatever items they wanted, because they'd know pretty much at any given moment exactly what items the player would have on them. So, for instance, the Forest Temple could do items puzzles only based on the hookshot, but later dungeons could do puzzles based on the hookshot and the Iron Boots, or the hookshot and some other weapon. And you lose that when you go to Link Between Worlds, because you're only telling them you just need this hammer to beat this dungeon. So you can only design puzzles around that one item. So the brilliance for Breath of the Wild was giving you all of the runes up front, by and large, and just mostly saying like, okay, now we've given you the tools to effectively solve every puzzle we can throw at you, and there is no place that is now gated off from you. Again, with a few exceptions, but basically then the idea is you can now progress however you want, because we can design any dungeon or any shrine to potentially require any of the items, because we've already given them all to you. So I thought that was a really interesting way to get around that problem of, limiting how the player can advance through. The downside is that then it becomes a lot harder for them to shepherd you through and tell a specific story in a specific order, which I think has contributed to a few other things from what I've seen in the storytelling that I do not want to get into for very obvious spoiler reasons. But I just thought that was a really good way for them to compromise and give you an experience that you can go through in any order, but that they can still trust you will be fully prepared for. Does that all make sense?
Yes. That makes perfect sense to me.
So I just really appreciate that that's how they specifically crafted this adventure, that you can really, as they say when you're on the plateau, you can go fight Ganon right now. I don't really recommend it, but you can if you want to. Like, he's right here. Like, there's a little dot. Head on over there. Have fun. Good luck.
It reminds me a little bit of Chrono Trigger, when you have the ability to fight Lavos. It's like,
get to the end of time. You want to fight Lavos? Yeah, go touch this little portal here. Drop you right at Armageddon. Good luck.
I still will never forgive you, Ben, for tricking me to go into the right gate at the start of the game.
Hey, Nick, check this thing out.
Oh, shit!
so
You're welcome.
So, obviously, the first takeaway, when you start with, is just how freaking gorgeous it is. Oh my god, it is pretty. It's...
Yeah. So, after Link's 10,000-year nap...
The graphics
100, let's be fair.
Yeah, after...
I know it was 100. I'm saying 10,000 years because of Power Rangers.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, after he wakes up from a very refreshing nap, he's quick power nap. Just
a quick 100-year power nap in this glowing blue pool. Nothing odd about this.
Nothing at all.
He has aged phenomenally. All right, I think we just need to put that out there.
He has. He looks very good.
This is called a genealogy.
He looks very good for his age. And just as I'm going through the first few minutes of this, and it's like, okay, pick up that tree branch. It's your weapon now. But wait, what?
And it's also a torch.
Oh, look, an axe.
I like that the game gave you all those options of like, what are you going to do with this? I'm going to set everything on fire. They knew exactly what players would start doing and stuff. And even the old man, maybe don't, please don't burn everything down. But I can't actually stop you.
Yeah, I have no free will.
I was watching a streamer and he was like, I'm going to build a simple lever switch thing here. So you got in the zone of plateaus you can do it almost immediately. He built a little seesaw, and then he levitated up one of the magnetic boxes. He's like, okay, let's see if physics works how it should work. Levitated the box up as high as it could, let go, and sure enough, physics worked like it should. You got flung into the air and then immediately died upon hitting the ground.
Early on, that was probably the number one cause of most of my early deaths were physics in this game. Because, in every other Zelda game before it, Link automatically jumped if there was, from one platform to another. You have now an actual jump button. And, and it's like, oh god, gravity is a thing now. I never understood that in older Zelda games, Link could fall from incredible heights, but if you timed it right, he could tumble roll and no damage.
Yeah.
Here,
so Brian, do you remember what I told you when you started playing Breath of the Wild? What Link's new superpower is?
Oh,
it's the greatest thing in the world.
Oh, you can climb shit.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
why
playing
is it to be that it's freaking Nintendo who has to decide, oh wait, what if we let them climb? 30 years in gaming, and Nintendo's the one that comes up with the notion of, if you see it, you can climb it.
Well, they've always been innovators. Now we know why.
Yeah. And
can we go around the room real quick? Everybody's favorite quick death. Just the favorite way that they've managed to either kill themselves or be killed by the game. Because I have a pretty good one. I'd love to share it. I'd love to hear your guys first.
You first, Ben.
So I used the stasis rune on a door. There was one of those giant metal doors that are just hanging around a couple of spots. And there were a couple of Octoroks that were shooting at me. So I figured I'd use stasis on the door, hit it a couple of times with whatever weapon I had, and it would shoot right out at them. Only at the very last second, right before it released, one of the Octoroks managed to hit the door with the ball that he was spitting. So the door flew back right into my face at very high speed from no distance whatsoever, and insta-death.
You should have been decapitated, is what.
If it would have been Resident Evil 4, it would have been Leon with the chainsaw. There's no question what would have happened there. The thing was still moving in midair when Link went through his death animation. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Mine so far that has given me the most chuckles is not the Wile E. Coyote falls from cliffs that Link is prone to, but I find that Link is apparently the most flammable substance in Hyrule.
I do like that your temperature gauge actually will light on fire when you are close enough to being on fire.
Like sometimes I'll had an enemy out in Hyrule Field, and he'll have flaming stick or bat or spear, whatever, and he'll hit me with it, and just the spontaneous combustion, like, Jesus Christ, do you have gasoline in your pores, Link?
I mean, he sat in a blue liquid pool for 100 years. It may have been flammable. We don't know. It may have absorbed into the skin.
Brian, he hasn't showered in a century. Like, we don't actually know how much oil is currently on his skin at the moment.
So to answer your question, I was killed by an ancient, although not in the way that you're expecting. So I
kind of am scared to hear this story. Just as spoiler-free as possible.
All right, so I'm going through and I'm fighting an ancient because I've gotten to a certain point in the game when not only is it feasible to do so, it's actually profitable. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to fight ancients and I'm going to make money and I'm going to get ready for go to fight Ganon. So I'm fighting an ancient. And I remember, oh, wait, I can parry stuff, right? So I'm trying to learn how the parry system works again because I haven't used it ever. Like, why would I ever need to? So I'm trying to learn how to parry the ancient laser and taking a bunch of damage and using my items as needed, right? Well, I don't parry it perfectly. I block it and deflect it. It goes and hits another ancient who aggroes to me, and I die from getting lasered to death.
Ouch.
Genius. Alright, so mine is I'm at one of the towers, one of the guiding towers, and it's a lightning storm. So I'm like, well, I don't feel like staying around here for 12 hours waiting for the lightning to pass because clearly it's not going to let up anytime soon. So I removed all my metal equipment and decided I'm just going to jump off and go to where I want to go. I'm on I want to get to my destination. So I jump and I parasail. Now, ideally, the lightning is not supposed to strike you if you're not wearing metal equipment, but there is still a chance you can get randomly hit by lightning. And I did while I was paragliding. And it wasn't the lightning that killed me, it was the fall.
It's not the 20,000. It's not the 200,000 volts of electricity going through my body. No, it's a sudden impact while 20,000 volts is going through my body.
I do have one more.
The fact that Link can get randomly struck by lightning and die in this game is hilarious. I did not know that.
I think it's actually better because I've been struck by lightning and lived. I don't know how, but I had 10 hearts. And the lightning took off 9 3/4 hearts. And I was very proud of myself for surviving because
armor does affect damage from lightning.
Yeah.
Link.
I thought I had dropped everything. It turns out I had not. But on the plus side, I literally walked right into a shrine right afterwards. So
have you ever used the lightning to your advantage and killed a boss enemy while lightning was happening?
Not a boss, but one or two guys. Yeah, I threw a sword at a guy once. He picked it up during the lightning storm, and that was not a smart move by him.
Fried bubblekin. I have one more. I do have one more story, and this is on my roommate. He started to play, and he was in one of the cold regions, and there's these tiny stone enemies. And he decided he was going to mess around with them because he learned that he could just lay them on their back and then they can't do anything, then die. Turns out there were 6 of them, and by the time he was able to lift up one, the other started to hit him. And eventually there was a group of 3 and a group of 3, and they were batting Link around like a volleyball, losing a 1/4 heart each time my roommate got hit. And finally he got hit off the mountain. It plummeted about a good 300 or so feet to his death.
Also, keep in mind too, those little frozen rock things will freeze you, so he gets knocked around like a ping pong ball and can't do anything.
Oh no, he had something to make him unfreezable.
Oh, I did not know that. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, there are things that you could do for cold resistance and whatnot, but just, getting back to the game for a second,
I thought that was the game, just stupid physics shit.
yeah, well, there is that. I actually really like the whole customization of things, the fact that you can basically pick up anything as a weapon. Yes, obviously there are so many comparisons you can make to Skyrim or any of the Elder Scrolls games, because that's what it feels like. I mean, I half jokingly call it the Elder Scrolls Hyrule for a reason. It's
I called it. I think. Well, Sam gave you Skyrule.
Yeah, Skyrule. That's what I called it. So I'm going to ask you a question, Ben, because I know that RPGs and open world games are not your forte at all. So, with so many comparisons to Skyrim, the fact that you can ignore the main quest for as long as you want, just explore, get lost, what is it about this particular open world game that has you playing this for hours on end, whereas, say, a game like Skyrim, you won't even touch?
So, there are 2 or 3 fundamental reasons why. I have theories only, but I think they all make a lot of sense. Number one, I don't feel like the stats-based stuff is as important in this game as it is in another, like, a Skyrim more RPG-ish type game. Obviously, I'm aware that, obviously the armor has different stats, the weapons have different stats, and certainly I pay attention to that, but, it's definitely something where I feel like it's not as important, because the combat is a little more free-range and open. So, listen, I took down the Guardian on the Great Plateau. It took me forever, and I used, easily 20 bombs to get it done. But I took down the Guardian on the Great Plateau the first time you're on the Great Plateau. So, they're just games that would not have let you get away with that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that this game does.
Ain't infinite bombs fun?
Yeah, well, infinite bombs really helps, especially when they're super weak. But I think that's part of it. I would be lying if I said the fact that it's the Zelda universe probably doesn't play any role. I mean, it probably does impact that, there are some locations and names and other things and tropes that are a little familiar. I think that certainly has to be a part of it. But the other thing, honestly, it sounds so stupid and sounds so phony to say this, but I really kind of think that Nintendo actually finished this game 2 years ago and then just sat on it and polished the crap out of it. And some of the recent stuff that they've put out actually sort of confirms my theory, because they showed some of the early concepts, like there was going to be an alien invasion, or there was going to be like a biker link, or a few other things. But they seem to very, very early on settle on this being an open world game with basically the art style that they went with at the end. And then they just kept making the world bigger and putting more stuff in it. So what's really been fascinating to me is there have been so many times when I'm just like, what is that? Let's go look at it. And it actually turns out to be something useful. I'm finding myself I'm finding myself really engaged by like the some of the side quests and like the Korok seeds and there are just all these other little things that normally, the collectathon doesn't feel like a collectathon, and I'm interested in doing what I need to do to upgrade my armor. And I think part of that is because they don't really force any of it on you, but they make it worthwhile if you're going to pursue it. And I again, a lot of it probably is the fact that it's the Zelda universe, but it's still just so much fun to me. They put a lot of charm and a lot of effort into rewarding you for actually exploring stuff. So I think that's a big difference. I don't feel like, I think that there are certain things, and I'm not going to say here, but I know in one item in particular, if you collect enough of them, you get a terrible reward for it. But I think that mostly Nintendo was just looking to actually make a really fun, big open world game, and they just nailed it. Not that it's flawless, because we can bitch about the rain mechanic, which I love and hate, and weapon durability, which I mostly don't mind at this point. But I think they just really set out to, they realized they had all this time to actually just make a bigger and more entertaining game, and so they just went along with it, and it just kept getting better. I don't know, that's me being a fanboy, though. The truth is, I'm having fun, and I don't quite know why I'm having fun getting lost, and I hate getting lost in games usually. I'm like, let me get to the next objective. But I think the fact that it's also not so samey, like that the towns feel unique and the locations feel really different, and can really feel like it's an alive world, I think that also helps. As opposed to something like Grand Theft Auto, where you're just in a city and you can't go in most of the buildings, but they're all there because how else would you know you're living in a city?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's something that you've criticized games like The Elder Scrolls in the past, like, because when you start the game, after the introductory quest in Skyrim, you can do anything, quite literally anything you want, and you do not like that at all. You want some direction, somewhere to go. The fact that you can do anything does not appeal to you, yet in this game, it's almost a sort of similar thing. I mean, you can, again, ignore the main quest indefinitely, but you're having a much better time of it.
Yeah, I'm a guy who hates crafting systems, who hates massive open world games without a ton of stuff to do, or massive open world games without a ton of direction. And give me Breath of the Wild, and it's one of my favorite games ever. Like, sure, that makes a ton of sense. Absolutely, that's. Again, a lot of it would definitely be the fact that it is a Zelda universe. I can't deny that, but the controls are so good, the gameplay is so fun. Most of the stuff I really love and really agree with. Visually, it's beautiful. I think it just mostly comes down to the fact that this is just such a well done game. And, listen, for me, fun trumps everything. As long as it's actually entertaining, I'll play along with whatever you want me to do. And this has been really fun. I've been going out of my way to avoid some story stuff. Like, I got to one area that I will not name, and, literally it was, okay, well, clearly you're here to advance some story stuff. And then I found 10 hours worth of content in and around that area to avoid going through with the story mission. Mostly because I didn't have 3 or 4 hours to sit down and do it all at once, and I figured I don't want to break this experience up, but also because I just kept finding new stuff to do, and it was rewarding and entertaining, so I'm gonna keep playing it because I'm having a lot of fun here.
Ron, you started to say something.
I was gonna say, to go back to your point of, I think you said, you thought that they've been working on this game and polishing it for 2 years. I'm pretty sure that's true because I'm pretty sure they were going to announce it at an E3 in 2015, and then almost immediately last minute got told by CEOs, no, you're not. You're going to make this game for the Switch, import it to the Switch. And then, to which Nintendo replied, but we haven't even decided what the Switch is going to be yet, to which the CEO replied, no, you're going to, otherwise you guys are going to go bankrupt.
I mean, I don't know specifically if that's exactly how it broke down, but you're not wrong. When they showed it in 2014, they promised it as a 2015 game. Then in 2015, they said it was going to be a 2016 game. Even early 2016, they promised it was a 2016 game. And then suddenly it was, no, just kidding, when we said a month ago that it was coming out this year. It's coming out next year, along with the NX, which we're still not telling you about yet. But trust us, it's a real thing and you're going to like it.
So there.
So, they were right. It is a real thing. We do like it. The game did finally come out for the Switch.
It's no longer vaporware. Congratulations.
It's true.
Going to what you said about the open worldness and despite the fact that this is, that there's a lot of stuff in there in other games you didn't enjoy, but you're enjoying in Zelda, I kind of feel the same way because I played Skyrim for 5 or so hours, but it never caught me. It never caught my interest because it kind of felt like you can do anything. And there's so many different options, so many different builds in Skyrim, and there's so much there that to me it was overwhelming. And I think Zelda kind of took just enough of that out, just enough customization by just saying, well, here's Link. and I hope you like this, because that's all you're getting. And there's just enough options taken out, but there's still enough open worldness that I don't feel like it's being bogged down like I felt like in Skyrim. And I think Zelda did a little bit of a better job with this as well, rewarding you for kind of taking the moment to go, "Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Oh, what's here?" And my roommate and I joke that we don't really call it Breath of the Wild, we call it Legend of Zelda. What the hell was I doing again? So, and
that's a pretty good subtitle.
And that's what it does so well, is that not only am I getting lost, I'm enjoying getting lost. Because I'm same as you, Ben. I just want to get to my next objective. Let's go. Side questing is nice and all, but only to a certain extent. And then come on, let's move on to the main adventure. But no, this game was very different in that sense of just going, hey, I can just go, and I just kind of let story missions progress naturally as I explored the world and explored the game. I really had no major overarching goal, and that just made it more fun to me. And I really just do enjoy the open worldness, and kind of Nintendo saying, "All right, how you gonna figure this one out? All right, how you doing this? How you doing that?" And Nintendo rewarding you for your curiosity definitely made it very worthwhile.
It's just interesting to get your guys' thoughts on it, because I have spent many hundreds of hours in Skyrim, and I love it. But I can sort of understand your point, being that it's about the Zelda universe, because you're playing as Link, and there's a lot of story and a lot of lore. There's 30 years of that to go on, whereas you start with basically a shell of a character when you start an Elder Scrolls game. There's no history behind that character. It's just you make that character what you want to make it. So I can certainly understand there. All right, let's unless we want to drag this out for longer, let's talk about some of the other Switch games.
We can do an entire podcast on just, hey, Zelda is good. Let's talk about how much we love Zelda. But I think we don't need to really get into that, especially if we're trying to avoid spoilers. I think we've been pretty good so far. I mean, we could keep going, but
let's keep this good and say, hey, we managed to spoil nothing about Breath of the Wild. Let's move on.
Let's move on. I know Ben is going to be leaving us soon. So, Ben, I know you've played Snipper Clips. We talked about it a little bit in the first half. You and Sarah seem to enjoy that game very much. It's a game I'm thinking about picking up.
It's definitely a fun. I mean, it's not really a one-player experience, but honestly, it's a good party game. It's a lot of fun. I spent every time I've shown it to someone, like I said, they've really, really enjoyed it. It's just a simple concept, I think, done well with a great visual style, and that's honestly, I think that's just really an important game. An important combination for an execution on a good game.
Nick, you've played. What do you think of Super Bomberman R? Obviously, I don't have it, but I know you do. What do you think of it?
Super Bomberman R is a good callback. Now, I don't know if you guys played the Super Bomberman games of the Super Nintendo, but it very much reminded me a lot of that style of game, which is what they should have gone for. My biggest problem with it is that it is meant to be held with the single Joy-Con held in that mini mode. You know what I'm talking about? Using just one half of the Joy-Con.
Ugh, vomit. Ugh.
So that's how it was meant to be played, and it was very buggy. The control sticks kind of stuck a little bit, so Bomberman would be stuck running in one direction endlessly. The online has some frame rate issues, to outright freezing at times. I want to love it. I want to enjoy Bomberman because Bomberman was my game back in the day. No one could touch me in Bomberman, and it feels very clunky. I guess is the best word. And I don't know if it's because it's no longer a Hudson game, it's a Konami game. I don't know if it's just, trying to make a control stick scheme work in a control pad style game. I'm not sure what it is, but it's just I want to like it. I want to like it. Now, this is understanding that a patch has just come out, 1.3 patch, and I guess addresses a lot of the issues. I personally have not tried it yet, but I've heard it does fix some of the issues, but not all of them. So, but I just the kind of the passion for me is kind of gone. Maybe I'll give it another shot, but I'm kind of looking forward to Mario Kart 8 that's coming out later this week.
Which it is. I should be getting the shipping notification from Amazon any day now. I'm looking forward to Mario Kart 8. Obviously, this was a game that was on the Wii U, but not owning a Wii U, I am really looking forward to this.
Mine's going to arrive about a few days later than probably when you're getting it. You're probably getting it Friday, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, mine's probably going to be a few days later, but I'll let you know when I get it because I'd be down to trying some of the new battle mode.
Yeah, and if that has, I don't know if this will have like multiplayer you can play against friends, but if it does, great.
It should. I think the Wii U had it, so no reason the Switch couldn't.
Well, yeah, but the Wii U's battle mode was also terrible, which was the entire reason why they needed to look at redoing the battle mode for this version anyway. I think actually Mario Kart is going to be an interesting not experiment. I think it's going to be an interesting thing to look at for them just because, so many of their core fans didn't necessarily buy a Wii U, so they didn't have a chance to play this game. So I think that's really why they see this as a strong opportunity. Mario Kart is always going to be something that another good party game, another game that people will get together and have fun playing. So I think they could do very well as far as sales numbers for this. I think it'll be interesting to compare. I think it would be unfair to say that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is not as well liked as Mario Kart 8 just because the install base of Wii U systems versus Switch systems. We all know the Switch did not sell very well over its lifespan, but it still had a larger install base by the time this Mario Kart was released than now with what the Switch does. So I think that'll be interesting to watch what happens with those sales numbers. And it's not like Nintendo is just sitting on units. The Switch, as you mentioned, is selling out pretty much as soon as they come into stock. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they do with sales numbers.
I'm curious to see them as well, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on this game. So, obviously I know that we collectively, us four, do not have a lot of experience with other games, so I'm just going to switch over to starting to wind this down. So, we have obviously a nice slate of games coming down the pipe later this year. So what are we looking forward to? I know E3's coming up in June. What do we want for this system? What games are we looking forward to?
Third-party games in general, because that's always been Nintendo's thing, is that they have a great first-party lineup, and they always have really good first-party games. But they tend to suck on the third parties, and that's what usually holds them back. But if there's companies that want to make third-party games for them, then we could see Nintendo rejoin the discussion on being a viable video game company again.
Well, at least EA is bought in on the Switch, so we're getting every sports game ever.
Well, they've bought in for the moment. They could do the EA thing of, well, we released one title, So we can say we supported Nintendo, but now we're not going to do anything ever again, and we're just going to say that it's their fault, not ours, that our games aren't on their systems. I mean, Nintendo's put themselves in a hole for a couple of generations by consistently being less powerful, but at the same time, if they can get people, the fact that it's a standard control scheme will make it a lot easier for other developers to put games multi-platform on Switch as well, and, the appeal of getting to play the big-budget Zelda or Mario game anywhere you go means that I kind of want that with other titles now, too. If I'm going to play some other games, there's definitely an appeal of, I can go anywhere, I can go on vacation and bring this with me, or if I have to go away for a weekend, I don't have to stop playing this title. So I think that there could be some surprising demand, but I would also not be surprised if, it turns out nobody wants to actually support Nintendo outside of indie developers and Nintendo themselves.
Yeah. One thing I will say is, I would love to see, I know I make fun of them for it, but Capcom, Street Fighter, this seems like a really good thing you could put Street Fighter on, and would have thing that you would want to have your friends play and you take it with you. I mean, Street Fighter on the go. That seems like a fun thing. Fighting games, I think could work. I think I said this during when we first had the Switch panel. I think fighting games could work really well with the Switch. I hope that someone actually does it. Well, I hope it's someone other than Capcom.
Yeah, I was gonna say we are getting Ultra Street Fighter 2 for the Switch.
Yeah, but I
think you'd like
when
a
I say
new title?
Fighting game, I don't mean a game that came out when I was 7 years old.
A new fighting
or
game
3 or 4.
More appreciated.
No, it'd be 4. I was 4 when Street Fighter 2 came out.
I was going to say, I mean, come on. I mean, it's only the 8th version of the same game. I mean...
Can we get, Street Fighter 5 or Guilty Gear or... probably not... Maybe Injustice 2? Probably not.
MVC Infinite?
Yeah, NBC Infinite would be nice.
You mean you're not getting your fighting fix with the King of Fighters 94?
No,
yeah, that was classic.
I'm waiting for Revelator 2 right now, which is the update for Guilty Gear. So
I know,
guys. I would personally love a new Power Stone, but that's just me.
I'm sure most people would love a new Power Stone. Too bad Sega's freaking terrible.
Sega, come on, this isn't hard.
I know that Ben, you mentioned Sonic Mania, Super Mario Odyssey. I know I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I loved the first one.
Yeah, those all looked awesome. I mean,
There's
Sonic Mania.
Too.
Well, I just meant Sonic just looked like, this classic, 16-bit 2D Sonic, just with some better visuals, including some very classic levels. Okay, yes, please. That all sounds incredible. Mario Odyssey, I don't know how to describe it. I just watching that game made me say, I really want to play this right now, please. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out with that. And I still think that there are other properties that they could be exploring. I was never big into Splatoon, but I might consider picking up Splatoon 2 just to see if there's anything there. Mostly though, I think that they did enough. They had to announce a couple of things just so people knew games were coming, and they mostly still had to focus the messaging a lot on what the system is and what it does. So they don't have to do that anymore. I think it's pretty clear that people get what the Switch is, and it'll be interesting to see, starting with E3, what else they focus on for marketing, for what kind of games that they're pushing, things like that. I'm excited, but we'll have to see whether or not they disappoint me again.
Well, Reggie did announce some time ago, because there was a lack of a Metroid title, and he said, talk to me again after a year and see what happens. So I think at E3 we might be getting something Metroid related. So I think
still
that's
might beating heart Nintendo caring about Metroid.
Yeah, Nick, Reggie more than once also said, you'll see Mario 128 next year. And that game does not exist. So
I'm willing to kind of get, it's been how many years? Nintendo it seems like they want to re-explore some of these paths and some of these franchises. I think Nintendo would be foolish not to throw a major Pokemon title onto the Switch. We're still waiting. It's been how many generations now? They've still not done a major Pokemon title on a console. This is the prime opportunity to do it. So I really would like to see that happen. I think more than anything, though, I want to see if Nintendo would, keep doing ideas like snipper clips and things and games like ARMS, and you kind of do these more out of the box ideas that kind of make it seem quirky and strange, but can being that standard idea of Nintendo fun. They did it with Splatoon. It was a huge runaway hit, enough that it's probably going to be a series from here on out. I think Nintendo could follow that same formula with some other games. I think can find the same level of success.
One thing I should probably point out, though, is Snipper Clips wasn't developed by Nintendo. It was published by Nintendo, but it was originally shown off as a different company's game, which is probably why it didn't get some of the press that something like 1-2 Switch and ARMS got.
Right.
But ARMS, I think, is another great example. I remember watching that trailer and actually just thinking to myself, this is going to have a really goofy, perfect name, and I have no idea what it is. And they announced it as ARMS, and I was like, yep, no, they fucking nailed that one. Like, that is just, you cannot do better than that title. I hope whoever came up with that, got a pat on the back, a raise, and was told to go home early that day, because just honestly, they nailed it. So, no, I'm kind of curious with ARMS. I'm still not a huge fighting game fan, but I think it's an interesting concept, and if the motion control works well enough, I think it could be really big. If the Joy-Con are not as, capable as they need to be, then I think it's going to be a bit like Wii Sports Boxing, which was not really as good as it should have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And personally, I would love to see, a new Mario Baseball, but that's just me. So,
You and me both. And I've heard the 3DS one is not great, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's average.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's disappointing. I was looking forward to playing you guys online, and
I am disappointed.
Womp womp.
So, do we have any final thoughts that we want to mention about the Switch or any of the games before I put this to bed?
They better have a lot of games to announce at E3 that are either first party or third party, because I am pretty sure that Sony and Microsoft are going to have stuff to announce, because now that those systems are starting to hit their stride, that we're going to start seeing a lot of titles and games come out with them. They're going to be like the defining games for this generation.
Yeah, I'm hoping we don't. I hope Nintendo's presentation isn't a lot of please understand. So,
I mean, I think Microsoft and Sony have an interesting problem just because they're doing all this mid-cycle upgrade stuff, and it'll be really interesting to see what the value add is there. If it's, the game will look better, but we won't make any games that only run on this. But trust us, you want to buy it for reasons we can't accurately describe, or if they can really push anything across. But I think Nintendo's earned a little bit of good faith at this point. They do have the entire virtual console library that they can play off of, although that's a whole other issue that they consistently fail to actually capitalize on. And I think that they have other titles that they could port to the Switch that could do very well for them. So I think it'll be an interesting E3, but they keep saying they've learned their lesson about making sure games come out, in waves and consistently for Switch rather than spread out. So I think E3 will be interesting, but I'm willing to give them a chance to shoot themselves in the foot again.
And we'll find out about that. So, I think on that note, we will put this one to bed. So if any of you out there on the wide world of the internet who has a Switch want to give us your first impressions about the Switch, good, bad, or indifferent, you can let us know at our website, dlcpodcast.com. Use the feedback button. Let us know. Check out every single episode that's there. Find out when we are doing upcoming recordings. If you want to ever be on one, just let us know. We'll get you in. So, all it remains for me to do is to thank Ron, Nick, and Ben. Welcome back again after 2 years, a 2-year hiatus. Hopefully it won't be another 2 years.
Link was sleeping for a long time.
You know, we already had Joshi on earlier this season out of his cryogenic stasis before E3. So, I mean, let's keep this going here. So
get the old gang back together here.
Yeah, why not? So, thank you again for being on the episode. And so, with that, I am Brian. Have a good one, everybody.